Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. It's our latest batch of listener questions, everybody. On this episode, we're asking how the USMNT would fare without Christian Pulisic. We're asking which manager should be replaced by one of his players. We're pondering whether goalkeepers should be able to handle the ball in both areas. Yeah, and much, much more. Here we go. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today in a power trio, Taylor Rockhole's here. Hello, Taylor. How are you?
I am doing really well, Ryan. I'm excited for all of these questions. That goalkeeper one, man, I spent way too much time on that one trying to get my head around it. I'm excited to talk it out.
As am I. A lot of chaos, that rule would cause. I think we should do it because I'm Team Chaos, personally. Joe Lowry, how about you? Team Chaos?
Team Chaos. I spent the least time of all the questions on that question that you're talking about and had a very quick reaction. So I am fascinated to hear what you guys are going to have to say.
Excellent stuff. Yeah.
Oh, mine was mostly like, how is the answer to this not immediately no? That's what I was working on.
I just stopped at no. That was
okay.
Spoiler
That's what I figured you were going to say.
Excellent stuff. We have a bonus feed. It's called patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. I don't think I've ever mentioned it on this main feed before, but if you go to that URL, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, there's bonus episodes, including a bonus listener question this week. Who's it from? Let's have a look. It's from Trent McJivers, who is who's supposing that you're a manager of a Premier League team. This is a great theoretical as well. Would you rather play all your home games in the first half of the season or all your home games in the second half of the season? That's on the bonus feed. Go check it out. Trent McJivers' question there. Also, we get bonus video content on there, access to our Discord where all the cool kids are hanging out. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. And we're doing it live in Los Angeles. We might have mentioned this a few times as well, but we are doing our live show on the opening night of the World Cup, June 11th at 8 p.m. Pacific. You can find us at the El Rey Theater in Los Angeles. It's good. It's a good town. It's a good town, Joe. You like LA?
I love LA. Just top tier town as a Phoenician. There's no town I'm more of a fan of than LA.
A Phoenician? Is that what you call yourselves?
Yeah, isn't it cool? Do you charlatans have anything? Is it charlatan? Please
Charlatans.
charlatan.
Yeah, exactly that.
Nice.
Phoenicians, it's very, very close to Venetians. It sounds sophisticated.
It feels classy. It does, which it's, we're not as a people, I think, but it sounds like we are in a sense.
Sounds like you rise majestically from the ashes, like some kind of mythical bird.
If only like a pigeon. Is that? They're not mythical. We have lots of them. I can assure you of that.
The mythical pigeons.
I want to see that now. A mythical pigeon.
Yeah, dude, they're crazy. Let me tell you.
Very good, very good. Yes, so do join us. There'll be 4 of us. Graham Rutherford will be there as well. Graham's not been on the feed this week. He's been in the Canary Islands. No canaries there. I went there a few years ago. I felt very ripped off, but he's there. I'm sure he's having a lovely...
mythical pigeons, though.
I know, yeah. So much bird talk already on the feed for this episode. Thank you very much, everybody who's bought a ticket already. And if you haven't, buy several. Link in the notes. Let's get to our listener question, shall we? We're going to kick off with this one from Kunal, who says, which team would be best served by replacing their manager with one of their current players to serve as player manager? Great question, Kunal. So, Taylor, which Chelsea player should replace Liam Wilson? Which one?
Thought about that one. I've got some European options. I am too excited by my question for Joe that I cannot get to those yet. Joe, I need this experiment to happen at the exact same time. I know your thoughts on firing the manager, bringing in a new manager, how it might not have that big of an impact. But who does the best knowing that they might not actually have that much of an impact?
Okay.
Alejandro Bedoya for the Philadelphia Union.
Okay.
Samuel Piette for Montreal. Diego Chara for Portland. Or, here's the curveball, Ricky Puig for the rest of the season for the Galaxy.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is so good. Okay, so my choices are Puig for the Galaxy, Chara for the Timbers, Bedoya for Philly, and Sam Piette for Montreal.
Yeah.
I mean, the Puig one is so much fun to think about.
Right?
I mean, I really, really like that idea. I do wonder if Puig would have a bit of Thierry Henry about him, though, of like, why can't you all just do these amazing things that I can do and are so easy and effortless for me, and I'm going to be really angry and annoyed the next time you take a touch that's 1 inch longer than it's supposed to be? I almost feel like I just got to go with the answer that I have on my list already. I got to go with Diego Chara, coaching the Portland Timbers. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if Chara would be a good coach at all. Just feels like we're ready for change in Portland, first of all. So that's one piece of this. But it also just seems like he's going to have some sage wisdom to share. Maybe he can give some dark arts practice. Yeah. Oh, Diego, that's good. I didn't realize that. I never thought about that before. I think Diego Chara could turn the Portland Timbers into like the ultra bunker and counter team in Major League Soccer. Move over Minnesota United. This is not your territory anymore. He's my answer. Although those are all incredible shouts, Taylor.
But he's also the one that I feel like immediately generates goodwill, right? Like I think Portland supporters love him, love what he has meant to that club, and so to have him take over, even on the interim basis, I think probably gives them a little bit of leeway, even if it doesn't have an immediate impact on results. I love the idea of Puig being similar to Thierry Henry, and one of like the assistants being like, Ricky, we haven't like practiced defending in 3 weeks. It's just been like threading the needle on through balls every single. No, okay, all right, fine. We'll see how it goes.
How do you say "shut
really
up, nerd"
dissimilar from what the Galaxy have done defensively?
I think Puig would just look over and be utterly enraged at that assistant coach. That makes me so happy. I would like to see all 4 of those things happen. Let's do it immediately.
All right. Then in Europe, it gets a little murkier, obviously. Like, the answer to this one should be Tottenham, but it's a problem we talked about with Tottenham when they first sacked Thomas Frank. That, like, I don't know who the legend former player, and in this case, the current player, that you look to be like, that's the guy who's going to lead by example. Ben Davies, I think, was one of the ones that was rumored for a while. The one who seems to have the most kind of, like, fighting spirit and intensity these days is Pedro Porro. So, like, is that the guy who you want on the touchline for the rest of the season? I feel like I tended to look for, like, over 30 veterans who've been there for a while and have a little bit of standing such that they'll have some leeway. I'm not sure who that would be for Tottenham, but I do have a European answer, and it's for Real Madrid, and it's Federico Valverde. I want to see Fede Valverde with a taste of his own medicine a little bit, because he supposedly is one of the ones who kind of works behind the scenes, or at the very least is public in his discontentment with Xabi Alonso. So there's an element there of like, man, let's see how easy it is for you. At the same time, he kind of does everything else for Real Madrid. Like, he's played everywhere. He's been the captain. He is the captain. So let's let him be the manager and see how it goes.
And on that same note, Taylor, surely Weston McKennie needs a shot at player manager at Juve. It's another position for him, right?
Yeah, but he loves Luciano Spalletti so much. Maybe it's like McKennie and Spalletti's duck are co-managers, and we see if that works for them.
There's been far too few duck co-managers in professional soccer.
Agreed.
I'd say that.
Agreed. More bird talk. Wow, we found a way.
We were destined. I love the Valverde shout. I mean, I keyed in on him while watching the Real Madrid Bayern game earlier this week, and he is just so much fun to watch. He seems so positionally intelligent. He does the dirty work getting back into the back line to give them the line of 5, but he also can push forward, and he's just such a well-rounded player. And I do wonder if that would give him a little bit of a leg up on some of his peers when it comes to taking over as a coach, because it seems like he understands so many different facets of the game and has such a good perspective on how that would work. I mean, McKennie, I don't know if he's got the personality for it. I kind of think that he doesn't. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on that in a decade or two. But he has some similar perspective on the game, having played in literally every line of the field. I'd be interested. I kind of think it would crash and burn with McKennie, but I'd be interested. I do have another high-level midfielder in Italy on my list. Luka Modric feels like he's got some coaching in his future, doesn't he? I don't know why it feels like he's gonna coach Croatia, and that's gonna be it. But I've got him taking over at Milan, move over Max Allegri. I wonder if this would make them a bit more fun, Milan. I don't know. Seems possible, but Modric is just a genius, right? I mean, he is an absolute soccer genius, the way that his brain processes things. I have no idea if that translates to being a good coach, because I think communication and management is the lion's share of that role, rather than like, oh, just because you see the game well, you're going to be good at it. Same with Valverde. We don't know how these things would translate, but Modric feels like a guy to me that sees the game at a ridiculous level, and that is at least a start. And then this last one that I have is actually a hope of, if not making the team better, because I don't think it would, but of making the team more fun to watch. And I've gone with Martin Odegaard at Arsenal. He'd make them a bit more free-flowing. He wouldn't play 4 center backs in the same back line, do you think? I think he would build a team that would play into the Martin Odegaards of the world, of which he is one, of course, rather than one that plays into the Ben Whites of the world. And that, I think, for all of us neutrals, is what I want Arsenal to be going.
I like it. I was... So go, Tyler.
Joe, would you take Nico Barella at some point for Inter?
Oh.
Not that they're in like a negative position, but he feels like one who will move into management. Similar to my point about Bernardo Silva from the Weekend Review, it feels like he is definitely going to be a manager at some point, but it's not as though City need a new manager right now.
Let's just do that entire iconic Inter Milan midfield trio. Let's just get Barella, let's get Mkhitaryan, let's get Çalhanoğlu, let's get all of those guys on the same staff together and just watch it until the earth explodes. That sounds good to me.
I could legit see DeMarco being a coach. Yep. So he basically hugs the touchline the whole game anyway. So like he's on the right part of this field already.
Can we put money on that now that Federico DeMarco will manage Italy at some point?
That feels destined. Yeah.
I also, the idea of Çalhanoğlu managing Turkey and Mkhitaryan managing Armenia, that's also kind of interesting and also geopolitically significant. So we'll see how that goes. Just to round out the kind of theme of the show, Maxi Falcone for Inter Miami. And
yes.
Is Robin Olsen still playing? I couldn't think of any other bird name players, but Falcon and Robin are now.
You can do Robin Janssen at Orlando City. That works.
There we go. Robin Janssen. Let's get him in there. You're welcome, Ryan.
I'm trying so hard to think of other bird players. I can't get there. We'll get there.
I got stuck on crane for a while. I was like, there's got to be a crane out there, but no.
Is there an Eagles? Is there an Eagles? Somewhere?
Blue Heron Richards. He plays for Man City, right?
Yeah.
Surely.
Cool.
Definitely good. Excellent. Kunal, thank you very much for your question there. We take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking about MLS same city teams and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the Listener Questions Avian Special. We go to Chip Schaller with his question. It is, will MLS ever embrace more same-city teams? One of the best parts of soccer in the rest of the world is the intense rivalry that can come when a city has several teams in a small area. I would love to see another ownership group swoop in, like a bird, in downtown soccer stadium in Boston, for example, says Chip Schaller. So, Joe, what do we think of this? Obviously, the likes of New York and LA have same city teams. To start off with, which other cities do we think could actually support that kind of thing in US soccer?
Zero probs at the moment. And that is a stadium concern more than anything else. I think on population, you could see Chicago doing something similar. I went through and looked at all the major American sports on the men's side, and New York and LA are off the board, as we talked about already. Those are two of the only three cities in the US that have 2+ teams from one league in the same city. Chicago is the other one, two Major League Baseball teams, of course. Those are the three cities in the United States that have what I just said, and two of those cities already have MLS teams that fit these criteria. Chicago would be one that you could see. I mean, I think, to go to Chip's question, I think MLS would love to see another ownership group swoop in with the downtown soccer stadium in Boston. Like, I mean, it's not like they haven't been trying. It's just not easy to do, right? And these things take a lot of time to grow organically. As to the question itself, will MLS ever embrace more same city teams? Don Garber's kind of in the habit now, as he's on his way out, of being MLS's commissioner, and the league is in the midst of succession planning and finding the next person to take that role.
Is that real? Is
yeah, definitely. Yep. I don't know when that's going to be, but he's been pretty public about how he's kind of winding down. As he's doing that, in more of these media opportunities that he has, I think he's been a bit looser, which I really appreciate. And he just kind of has been saying never say never a whole lot, you know? Will MLS have pro-rel? Maybe. Not soon, but never say never. Will MLS continue to expand? Maybe. Never say never. I think that is sort of MLS's attitude, because I don't think they know exactly what the future is going to look like. Is the future going to look like some sort of merge with Liga MX? Don Garber would say never to that. I mean, there's so many things that feel like are on the table right now for MLS. Whether that's roster stuff, what is that going to look like? How is the calendar going to change things? Where does growth come from? What's the next TV deal going to look like? That's going to come up sooner rather than later. I mean, there are so many of these huge landscape-altering questions that MLS is dealing with that I truly don't think they will take anything off the table. All of that said, I think a huge reason why this doesn't happen in the United States, why we don't see, like we see in England maybe, of these soccer teams popping up. I think a huge reason this won't happen is stadium difficulty. If we're talking about true top flight stuff, It's not easy fitting another stadium in New York. I mean, there's only one soccer stadium in New York now. It's not even done, right? It's not, or one big true soccer-specific stadium. That's what NYCFC is building. The other one's in New Jersey. Like, building these stadiums in fully developed, highly populated American cities is so difficult. MLS still does not have a stadium in Boston. It's only getting one now in New York City. Sharing a stadium, not ideal from a financial standpoint. And we even see that in some European cities, of course. And building these new ones is really, really difficult. Could it happen as MLS continues to grow? Could we see an MLS merger with USL down the road? I mean, we talked recently about how messy USL's business model is and how unsustainable that sort of seems to feel to me and to, I think, a lot of us. I would say never. But in the short term, I don't think this is realistic, and I also don't think it really would fit what MLS is trying to do strategy-wise with increasing their footprint. But it's an interesting thing to think about.
I mean, you get that immediate rivalry, right? But then outside of that, like it might not have the significance and sway that MLS like tends to want when they're launching expansion teams. I think Joe is right with everything he said. I would just add, like, I did have the same point about like maybe that's a USL thing, maybe that's a thing if they were ever to merge. It does feel like a thing that would only happen a long time from now, but a lot of it has to do with Pro Rel, and I think Pro Rel helps us kind of like helps you establish, can we sustain two teams? Can we kind of compete if we start spending a little bit more money and we have a nicer stadium? Can we kind of catch up and surpass some of the teams around us? And I think when you have the closed system, I'm not sure that benefits certainly existing owners, very certainly the owners who are already in that city who are like, wait, no, we don't want a team downtown Boston. They will take all of our market share. No, thank you. But if you have Pro Rel, you can't really stop that. But so I think short of that, I don't know how this happens in short order. I did have a couple other nominees, though, because I didn't think about the idea of like going into an area where there are lots of supporters kind of disaffected or frustrated by their current ownership and then trying to kind of snake them away to a new club. And that does feel like you could kind of maybe try that in Boston. Dallas is the other one where maybe if you put a stadium downtown, not 30 miles away, that's being constantly worked on for the next, I think, 15 years. Like maybe that also pulls in some people and generates some more interest. And then the last one that isn't quite the same because it's a different city, but I think kind of plays on the same idea. I think a Raleigh franchise probably brings out like the other half of North Carolina on their side, and then you do get the kind of Carolina rivalry that exists between those two. Ryan would hate them forever and root against them, maybe on the same level as he would root against Italy. I'm not sure which one he would dislike more.
Well, time will tell. Time will tell. Never say never, as Don Garber would say. I think Raleigh was the front runner to get the franchise before Charlotte got it, actually. And someone had a lot of money and made that.
Yeah, they said they looked at the better city first and then just didn't think it worked out.
I'm just giving you silence. Phil McGinney for that. Yeah.
Yes, but in the silence there is sadness, and I will take that sadness.
I think Riley could definitely support a team. Another one kind of like that on the West Coast. What about the Bay Area? Obviously, we should couch this in the fact that there are lower league teams, obviously, like Oakland Roots are at the Coliseum, for example. What if you put an MLS team at the Coliseum and San Jose was kind of the rival? Not, as I say, not same city technically, but Bay Area. Call it that.
I like that there's still, you said Bay Area, but I like that even then, both of them are like, we cannot afford real estate in San Francisco. So Oakland and San Jose it is. Yeah. I mean, that would be cool. I would love, that's where, again, like the appeal of Pro Rel. If it's an option to get your way all the way up to like the top flight, I think the Roots are positioned well for that and maybe expand and get some investors and you see where they go. But that would be awesome. I would enjoy that, Ryan. Yeah, let's get a team in Oakland.
Can I
make it happen
Ryan,
now?
Can I ask you a question about how this works? In let's just use London maybe as an example. So how many of the big Premier League soccer stadiums are actually in London proper as you would define it, and how many are maybe more outside the city? Like I'm trying to equate this to Boston. Let's just keep using this as an example, where the Revs would very much like to build a stadium in Boston, and right now they're not in Boston. They are in a suburb of Boston. Like how does that work in London, and is that sort of similar there?
No. So because these teams have been around a long time,
right.
Most of the London teams, as you know them, are actually in London proper. So Arsenal, Tottenham, Wimbledon, Fulham, Chelsea, they have London postcodes. They are actually in London. Teams like Watford is on the outskirts of London, so that would be the equivalent, I would say, because they're kind of on the sort of the M25, the sort of circular road that goes around the outskirts of London. They're just on the outside of that.
Right,
so
okay.
It doesn't work the same way, to answer the question.
And I think what you've talked about there, because these teams are so old, they have sort of grown in some ways with the city. Mm-hmm. And that's just not really possible at this stage, as I see it anyway, in these big cities in the U.S. The U.S. has land, as we've seen MLS teams go to the suburbs and build, but it is so difficult, I think, to put stadiums in the real hearts of these cities, which is ultimately why I think the American soccer landscape and the geography of teams is just fundamentally going to always look different than it does in Europe. I mean, the country is so different. It has different needs. It has different possibilities and different challenges. And I just do not picture a world in which, I would love for this to happen, by the way, but I just do not picture a world in which there's another soccer stadium in New York City in my lifetime. Maybe not in my children's lifetime, which don't exist yet, by the way. But, I just don't envision that happening. And I can envision a world in which whatever lower division soccer looks like in the United States in 20 years, I can envision a world in which there are more and more soccer-specific stadiums between 5 and 10,000 and 15,000 seats, in all sorts of smaller cities across the country, and even in some suburb areas of like cities with top flight teams in the United States. But I just don't think MLS or the American soccer landscape as a whole, because I think that's more relevant here, I don't think that we're going to see them embrace more same city teams in the way that we see it in major European cities. The context is just fundamentally different.
But hey, Joe, what would Don Garber say about that?
Never say never.
Uh-huh. Even though he said it twice in that sentence.
That's a good point. We should raise that.
I just need Joe to keep like subtly dropping crazy bits of news, like, oh yeah, Don Garber retired. You guys didn't get that? Yeah, I have 2 kids. Was that not a thing I talked about before? Like,
I named them both after birds.
You
guys didn't hear about that? It was crazy.
Chip Schaller, thank you very much indeed for your question. We go to Brett Weissman, who's come in with this one. I love Christian Pulisic. That's Brett speaking. But why does it feel like the team is more cohesive when he isn't on the roster? When he's playing, it always feels like we're forcing the ball to him and that he's taking on too much. Taylor, the old tale that's as old as time of a star quality player, perhaps being to the detriment of the overall team dynamic. What do we think?
Let's start with that idea, the star quality thing. Because, like, my answer to this question in reasoning it out made me uncomfortable at times because it veers pretty close to hot take territory, which is not a place I like to spend time. But for purposes of this question, I shall. When you look at international teams, I think oftentimes, especially when they are of a kind of size similar to the United States, or at least a stature similar to the United States, but even bigger ones, one personality tends to dominate. And like Ivory Coast with Didier Drogba is the prime example. If Drogba is fit, he is in that team, he is starting, he is the captain, he is the focal point of that team. But you get it with Kvaradona and Georgia, you get it with Mkhitaryan and Armenia, Mbappe in France even, maybe you could make the argument, but like James Rodriguez with Colombia.
Ronaldo?
Those players tend to be the focal point of their team, the ones that you kind of know are going to be there, the ones that make the team work on some level. And even like this summer, like I won't be surprised if Kusanov from Manchester City is like a central midfielder for Uzbekistan, because you got to tell me anybody on that team can pass the ball better than he can? Probably not. And we've seen it in the past with like David Alaba with Austria, where he starts off as a left back, but for them is occasionally playing like in the center of the pitch. When you have those players who can be such difference makers, you're going to do whatever you can to build around them and make sure that they are on the ball. The problem is that I'm not sure Pulisic is good enough as any of those players to be that player for the United States. I'm not sure he has like an elite skill set in certain areas enough that it more than augments for his deficiencies or for when he is in bad form. And so I think what we come to is a situation in which you can have a figure like that who leads the team because they are technically superior and far and away the best player on the team, and I'm not sure that's Pulisic. Or it can be because they are a vocal leader and an emotional leader. And I am very confident that is not Pulisic. And so I think that, to me, is the problem in a nutshell, is that he is not going to be that kind of motivational, inspiring leader. I think he's going to be a quieter, head down, I'm just going to do my job player. I think that's what he wants to be. But then he gets put into the spotlight, sometimes by his own actions, sometimes by the media and advertisers. But I'm not sure that's where he thrives. In that way, he reminds me more of Landon Donovan for the United States, who's always going to be front and center when he's playing, until he's not with Jurgen Klinsmann, but isn't the one that I think of as being the kind of emotional leader. I think of that as many other players, including Clint Dempsey. A lot of the times when those two are in the team, it's sort of, you think of Dempsey as being like the spirit and the heart of the team, and then you think of Donovan as being, I don't know, like the energy and like talismanic leader in that way. I don't know. But the point being, I think we don't have somebody to balance out the reliance on Pulisic the way maybe we did with when we had somebody like Clint Dempsey in there. But I also don't think Pulisic is elite enough to be the guy who demands the ball, who demands the set pieces, who is the one that we're always looking to. And I think that is a thing that tends to happen when he's on the pitch. And if you're looking for him to be that guy when he's in a bad run of form, I wonder how many other kind of options collapse or aren't seen because you're just trying to get the ball into him because he's the guy who can cook, except that right now there's no gas to power the stove and he's not really cooking all that effectively.
So is your answer then to the question, Taylor, because I think that's all interesting, is your answer to the question of why does it feel like the team is more cohesive when he isn't playing?
Yeah.
Is that because his teammates are too deferential to him? Or what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that like on some level, like if you play, I always like feel uncomfortable comparing my experiences to this because I am not in any way
comparing a pigeon to an eagle, sort of is.
Exactly. Thank you, Joe. And even then, like they're at least the same species. I don't think I'm in the same category as even like the worst professional footballer.
So Pulisic has an eagle tattoo. Do you have a pigeon one?
I'm going to get one, and it's going to be a super pigeon. I think that just means it's extra bulbous. I don't know, but I need that to happen.
Yeah.
I think that when you have a player that you know is like the one that we all look to, the one that the whole team knows is like the guy, on some level, I think there is like get the ball to him. Like we got to get the ball to him. And he, to his credit, is generally not one who's like screaming for it and being really annoyed when he doesn't get it, the way I think players who are of that caliber can be. But I think it's still a thing that, players expect, like, just get the ball to Christian. He's going to cook. He's going to take people on. If we don't have other options, he'll find something. But I think that's not really putting him in the best situation. And I think it does then mean that a team that could play maybe a little bit more unified, a little bit more controlled, can move the ball more effectively, like ends up giving the ball to him. He loses it because you're asking him to just go and create. And now you're kind of caught out. You have to transition to defense. You put yourself in an awkward position, whereas I think when he's not there, you're more focused on kind of building team moves, building team possession. And I think even if you lose the ball in that situation, you are theoretically, hopefully, in a more stable situation to then defend or counterpress or what have you. I'm not sure that's the case when he's going on a mazy dribble and then shooting it at the goalkeeper, but you have some people now 40 yards up the pitch and some people now 40 yards behind the ball.
So is your argument then that Pulisic should not play for the U.S. when he's not in form?
Man, that's tough. Because, like, at the same time, he is still one of our best players, right? Like, even if he doesn't show it as often, there will be moments when it's like, oh, right. Like, he can do that with a ball. He can make something out of nothing. There are those moments. So I'm not saying that, because I certainly don't think that there's an obvious player who is, like, waiting there to be better than him and can do things better than him. I think it's that, like, the team itself maybe needs to just, like, have those leadership figures who are, like, also demanding the ball or are correcting one. Like, hey, man, like, don't give him the ball there. Like, give him the ball here. I think maybe it needs more leadership and less of a reliance on, like, the one savior to dig us out of this hole. It needs to be, I think, the whole team trying to make that happen and not just looking for, like, the safety valve that isn't necessarily a safety valve. I don't think I can give you a better answer than that, even though that's still not as clear as I would like it to be.
No, I think a lot of what you're saying in there makes sense to me, Taylor. I think Christian Pulisic needs to be on the field in every moment that matters, basically, for the U.S. this summer. And I thought he played pretty well, frankly, in the March window. I know that's an unpopular opinion. He was not set up to succeed against Portugal, certainly. I think we can all agree on that. But he was still the U.S.'s most dangerous open play attacker in both of those games, like even playing out of position in the Portugal game.
But, like, Joe, isn't he still, like, and I'm not trying to, like this is not meant to be a gotcha, but, like,
no.
In our live stream, you were talking about, like, how he cannot shoot the ball. Like, he is not a good striker of the ball. Like, is that not a glaring deficiency in your most creative and talented attacker?
By no means is Christian Pulisic a perfect player. He is the only U.S. player that we saw in this last window who creates opportunities to shoot the ball in open play.
I'll give you that.
So he is still a step above everybody else in that way. So no gotcha question there at all. That is a legitimate deficiency in his game. He's bad at taking set pieces, and at times the ball does stick to his foot a little bit. So I want to go back and sort of go through my reasoning to respond to this question. I think the U.S. might well be more cohesive when Christian Pulisic is not on the field. I had to look up the definition of cohesion just to make sure I was totally on board with what we all mean by this. The action or fact of forming a united whole. Okay, so when Pulisic is not on the field, the spacing for the U.S. might be more uniform. The ball might be moving a little bit quicker in possession. The defensive work might be a little bit more uniform. It might be more cohesive. Is cohesion the mark of a good national team? I'm not so sure, or at least of a winning national team. I'm not so sure. And let me make the case. The ball sticks at Christian Pulisic's feet. I think that is inarguable. When you watch him play, he is more likely to take a couple of extra touches to try and see what he can make happen than just about any other U.S. player in the pool. The ball sticks at his feet, but he is making things happen. And that is the trade-off that you have to make until you acknowledge this trade-off, right? It is one that every team, not just the U.S. and the world, makes. Stars break your tempo more often than not, but they also break open the game. That is the balancing act that we're talking about here. To use a different eagle to pigeon metaphor, but one that's inside the soccer world, this time Pulisic's the pigeon. I mean, maybe he's a super pigeon in this case, but Lamine Yamal, he's the eagle in this case. He is light years better than Christian Pulisic. Every person on the planet would take that trade in a heartbeat if you gave them that trade, except if you have Lamine Yamal already on your team. He is light years better than Christian Pulisic. And so he should be given a little license to slow the game down and freelance a little bit. And he does. And Barcelona and Spain are obviously better because they have Lamine Yamal on the field. It is clear to see that trade-off is worth it for them. Christian Pulisic is the pigeon. He's the dollar store version of Lamine Yamal. And the USA, as the dollar store pigeon version of Spain, has the same thing happen for them in my mind. It's proportional, of course. The impact is less. But also I think the ball sticks a little bit less, frankly, for Pulisic than it does for Lamine Yamal. If you take Christian Pulisic off the field, ultimately, is cohesion, like this idea of cohesion, capital C, going to create chances for you? I don't think so, man. Like, I don't think you're creating more chances with Brendan Aronson on the field than Pulisic, and I don't think what Aronson gives you defensively is enough to compensate for the lack of creation that you've tossed aside because you put Pulisic on the bench. Who is going to do that stuff? Ultimately, from a fundamental player level, there is not a player in the pool who's going to create like Christian Pulisic does. I do not think the ball sticks on his foot nearly enough. I do not think he is absent nearly enough defensively to make any sort of an argument that there needs to be a personnel change. And I recognize, Taylor, that you're not even making that argument. But my perspective on this is I think we can all agree that the U.S. is probably less cohesive in a definitional sense for having Pulisic on the field compared to, say, an Aronson. But is the U.S. better for taking Pulisic off the field? I think in almost every circumstance, the answer is a pretty clear no.
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything you said, Joe. I think ultimately, and where like the Dempsey-Donovan thing, I think what I was trying to connect it to is like if Gio Reyna had developed from 2022 or before 2022 the way we had hoped he would, if he were a consistent every game starter for Dortmund or had already moved to a larger club and was like the player that Joe believed he could be and maybe still does believe he can be or is, like, and you put him into that U.S. national team. Or, like, put more simply, like, I don't know why I'm so all about Bernardo Silva these days, but, like, if Bernardo Silva were American and you put him into this U.S. team, they are instantly better, not just because he is, like, an exceptionally talented player, but because I think you then have balance, and you have another player that you can look to, that you can play through, that can also take people on, that can create individually, to Joe's point. But I think also is going to kind of demand the ball, demand some of the attention, and criticize players where they're overly reliant or overly feeding Pulisic. And then Pulisic can quietly go about the things that he wants to do and do well without having to be the star in the spotlight. Again, a position I don't think really suits him. I don't think he really thrives in. I think he prefers like quieter opportunities, quieter moments. He's not out there looking like, I'm the man, I'm the guy, put me front and center. It feels like that's oftentimes a role he's thrust into and then kind of awkwardly accepts or hesitantly accepts at the very least. And I think if you had one player who was of a similar caliber, not even necessarily better, but just had that same rough level, the way I think you had with Donovan and Dempsey, I think that brings you more cohesion and more kind of consistency across the board. The US I mean, which is obvious, like a better player makes them better, but I think there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, I think about this in a more like on-field tactical sense as I'm imagining in my head. And I was going to take it a little deeper than just a better player makes them better, as you're saying, Taylor. But it also just makes them more balanced, right? Like imagine if you had someone of a similar threat to Pulisic on the other side of the field. You're going to be able to do different things. I just think it is natural and it is not wrong that the U.S. is largely deferential to Christian Pulisic. I don't think they're so deferential that it's a problem, really, in 99% of these cases. Like, if Christian Pulisic doesn't have the ball and Gio Reyna is not fit and not on the field, who is going to do the creation?
Aiden Morris.
What do you want? I don't understand what they're supposed to do other than be a bit deferential to Pulisic. And so if you have another player that you can also be deferential to, then it becomes more balanced and you do hit some of that cohesion. Spain can do that sort of stuff in a way that the U.S. just can't. But I think this comes with the territory of having a player who is just a little bit better at a lot of things than everybody else. And Pulisic is not so much better at all those things, Taylor, to go back to what you kind of opened with, that it feels supernatural. But the alternative is just not good for the U.S. They do not have any other option than to have Pulisic be a key part of this team. The more that it can be spread, the more that there are other players that can change games, of course, the U.S. is going to be in a better spot. But I think he does force it a little bit, Pulisic, but I think that's also because he's sort of has to in this team.
There we go. Brett Weissman, thank you very much indeed for your question. We take one more quick break. When we come back, we're talking about US Open Cup. And of course, the big question on everybody's lips, should goalkeepers be able to handle the ball in both areas? Back soon. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Couple more for you, dear listener, including this one from David from Tampa. Would involving college teams in the US Open Cup benefit the tournament? NCAA schedules make it difficult, but USSF has made recommendations to improve the NCAA late last year. Would including a way to bring college teams into the tournament benefit anybody? Ooh, Joe, you look piqued in your interest in this one. What do you think?
I love this question. And I love some of the potential progress that we're seeing in college soccer. We haven't talked about this, I think, maybe ever on this show. But as David mentions in this question, U.S. Soccer made some recommendations for what college soccer should look like. And they feel, frankly, quite obvious, although there are some creative things in there. But I think we all recognize that the NCAA is sort of this untapped resource. American soccer is weird. It's funky. It's developed in different ways in other countries. We talked about that with the stadium stuff earlier. Good players are playing college soccer. Professional players. There's some scout was telling me this the other day, and it's spot on. And I like the way that he put it. There's a $20 million player in college soccer somewhere right now on the men's side, and on the women's side, there are a bunch of national team players. We already know that. But we see. Patrick Agyemang comes from college soccer. There's so many of these players that have moved for high level transfer fees that are in college soccer right now that will be making similar moves. So it is an untapped resource, and that the season right now is so short is just a missed opportunity, I think, for everybody involved. And so to recap some of those recommendations just quickly, because I think it's interesting and gives context to the question. U.S. Soccer recommended that the men's side of all this, much more of their recommendations were focused on the men's side than the women's side, that they would move to a full year, academic year sort of season, starting in a fall, and their season would kind of mirror the European calendar, where they would take a winter break in between semesters, which works out great. And then in general, they would have games every weekend instead of like twice a week, that sort of thing. And they would have the championship stuff at the end of the season, at the end of the school year in May. I think that would be fantastic. And it would sort of align college soccer on the men's side with where MLS is going. Who knows, where USL is going to go or any of that sort of thing. But I think that would be a huge opportunity. And if then you had the schedule for college soccer to look at the Open Cup aligned better with the professional schedule at the top division of where we're going here, then I think it would be easier for them to play in the Open Cup, and you could see some real crossover there. I think college teams have played in the Open Cup before, if I've got my history down right. I think back in the 20th century we saw this, like earlier in the 20th century. And then also BYU apparently random played in the Open Cup back in 2015, because somehow they were not playing like in college that year. They were just a PDL team. I don't understand all the mechanics of that, but I just see zero downside from a player development standpoint of college soccer making these changes to play in a more regular professional-ish sort of cadence. And I see zero downside to those teams competing in the Open Cup. I think it'd be super fun. I'm very much here for it.
Yep. Agree with everything Joe said. I think it probably also makes some of like the lower level teams raise their game, because I think very good D1 teams, if they go up against a USL like League One side and they're not really feeling it that day, a college team can and will beat them. So it probably raises the competitive value in that way. Unfortunately, I think my larger answer is like it wouldn't hurt things, but MLS not taking the U.S. Open Cup seriously is the major problem. That really is what it comes down to. It's just that if you don't have every professional team in the country or every team in the country like on some level enthusiastic about the competition, it just hurts the branding right away, because it's like you can add college teams and it's like, oh, okay, so it's like college teams and USL teams and then like reserve MLS teams. Is that how it works now? Like it doesn't have that same cachet as even the FA Cup, where obviously it's the oldest cup competition. Obviously it has that history. It doesn't have as like the importance it used to have, but at the same time, when you get to the quarterfinals, I think it does kind of pick up in the intensity and the interest and the enthusiasm. And I think MLS teams being in the U.S. Open Cup is the number 1 and 2 and maybe 3 way to make it much more relevant and much more important in the U.S.
I kind of agree with that, Taylor, but as the counterpoint, all the MLS teams used to play in the Open Cup and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal because they made it not a big deal, right? Like, I mean, I just don't think any team is ever like, it's a weird like chicken or the egg situation, but I think if MLS, it's not their competition, so they won't do it. That's part of it. But if they came out and said like, this is a priority, we're going to help with the prize money or whatever it might be, like you can create more enthusiasm for it so that when a team wins it, it is more relevant, it is more important, it is more resounding than it is right now, where it's like, oh yeah, you won US Open, okay, but like you finished 7th in the East, so your coach is fired. Like it never seems to really like carry that weight that it could carry, and I think some of that is because MLS generally does not want it to have that much weight.
I think from my view on this, the US Open Cup, for it to be fit for purpose, has to let college teams play, because that's what an Open Cup is. It's open to everybody. Like, my understanding is any pro or amateur team can enter the US Open Cup, right? As long as you're registered or whatever as a team. So like if Total Soccer Show registered a team in an amateur league, we could play in the Open Cup, right?
We would have to qualify to get there.
Yeah, obviously. Like, same deal. So the equivalent would be the FA Cup in England, right? You have to get qualifying rounds. University of Bath, for many years, had a team that would go like in the FA Cup and was in the professional leagues. That was a university team. So it's a similar kind of thing. And they went into the FA Cup, which is an open cup. Anyone can enter. So I don't see why an open cup can be called an open cup if it doesn't let everyone play. Doesn't make sense to me.
No, I think that tracks. The current problem is a schedule challenge, right? Well, I shouldn't say that's the only problem. There may be other logistical problems that I don't know about, but the college soccer season's been over for months now, and the Open Cup is kind of just now we're in the throes of it. And so the schedules just simply do not align for this to be a possibility now. But if there's changes in college soccer and also changes to the MLS calendar, maybe we're going to see changes to the schedule of the Open Cup. We could see changes to the format of the Open Cup. There's also, I would imagine that everything's pretty much on the table for what the Open Cup looks like in the future. Just because, to go back to the root of this problem, I kind of fundamentally disagree with what you said, Taylor, about MLS teams. Yes, it would be great if they took this more seriously. So I suppose it's not a fundamental disagreement, because that is common ground. I think that's helpful and probably essential long-term for the Open Cup's health. We take jabs at the FA Cup all the time on this show, and talk about how we're less excited to watch those games from the Premier League. Developing, especially now without all this history that's tied to it in a mainstream kind of way, like England has mainstream history tied to the FA Cup. The US doesn't have that. Developing an Open Cup competition that is actually interesting to people, I think, is so difficult. And even I'd have to imagine that interest in the FA Cup has cratered over the years, like when it comes to TV audiences and things of that nature. I think there are like existential questions about how to make the Open Cup more popular. And I don't think simply getting MLS teams back on board and telling them to kind of hype it up a little bit gets you even close to probably where you need to be or would want to be here. But I do absolutely love the idea of college soccer teams being involved. And I think that is going to be a no-brainer if all of these sort of changes come to actually happen here.
All right. Dave from Tampa, thank you very much indeed for your question. One final one for this here episode, and it's a good one. It's from Treeman35, who says, I've always thought that the goalkeeper should be able to use their hands in either box. How would this impact
this? I'm already in, Ryan. You've always thought this, Tremens35? Like, I need to know what the thought process was, how that came to be. Like, whenever there's a corner kick that's caught by the goalkeeper, are you sitting at home like, oh, that should have been the other goalkeeper catching that one? How does this work in your mind? Tell me things.
Treyman35 was in kindergarten, sitting there playing with the blocks, going,
there it is.
I think goalkeepers should be able to use their hands in both boxes. Yeah. Treyman35 continues, how will this impact the game for better or worse? Now, Taylor, immediately I thought, this is amazing. This sounds fun. But also, all I thought about was set pieces and a goalkeeper going up for a corner, catching the ball and throwing it in the net. What's stopping them doing that?
There's no real way to make this, I think, end up being possible. My note, Ryan, is this is the most insane idea I've heard in a while, and it's so insane that I need to discuss it at length. But to your point, like, can the goalkeeper throw the ball into the net once they catch it? Are they allowed to run it in? Like, are they just catching and running it in? How do you dispossess them? If they're standing still, is there a shot clock? Like, are they just allowed to hold the ball until everyone gets into the position so that you can then, like, lob it up for an alley-oop? I have so many questions about how this could work that ultimately I am definitely leaving it. If it was a take, I'm definitely no is the answer. But it would be a crazy fun, like, one-game experiment just to see how disruptive it would be. And my assumption is that it would end up with, like, a lot of very static set pieces and a scoreline of, like, 10-9.
It's crazy that you just described the NFL, which is what this would become. I mean, the sports are already quite similar. You're just allowing a goalkeeper to play as a wide receiver, basically, is what you've had happen here. There's just no way that this wouldn't result in exactly what you just said, Taylor, which is set piece after set piece, hurling numbers in front of the box, protecting numbers in front of your own box, and making the game far more choppy, far less free-flowing, and much more physical, which I just don't really think is what I'm looking for when I watch soccer. I love the thought experiment. I really, really do. But that's where this took me. I have down 3 words in my notes. All caps. NFL time, baby. I really, truly believe that this would make soccer look more like American football. And we're already kind of doing that as a soccer society, and I don't think we need to do more of it.
I mean, to your point, Joe, like, I think that is, like, to go back to the whole, like, is it football or is it soccer? Like, back before football is codified the way it is, and you have different sports that claim to be football, you have different rules for, like, where you can use your hands and when. And that's where, like, as you start to get more, like, written down rules as soccer and football become the same thing, like, you start to have regulations about, like, a keeper can, I think originally it was they can only handle it now in their half. Like, so they had to, like, tighten it up from the whole field to just their half. And then eventually that's even tightened up to their own 18. And then obviously they get rid of the back pass rule. So, like, we did have this to start off when the sport is more similar to, like, American football / rugby. And it didn't seem to work very well, such as we've had it regulated to this point, which now just makes me think that Tremens 35 is actually like a British aristocrat from the 1870s who just wants a return of the original form in its purest form, and that's what we really need to make this sport hum.
Oh, yeah, we'll call it real football.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally real football, yes.
I like that. What if the goalkeepers weren't wearing gloves? Will that help in any way?
Minorly, maybe. Not really. I mean, I do
I
sort
bet
of
you'd
wonder.
shoot a lot more. I bet everybody would shoot a lot. There is something about, like, if you are a team playing a team where, like, the person is clearly just going in goal with no gloves, like, oh, it's the 12th player, like, the last guy who arrived has to go in goal. There is just, like, I am shooting every time I get the chance. This person is saving nothing. It would probably create a mental obstacle.
When there's no gloves, it does sort of make me think that they're going to forget where the near post is. Like, they're just going to wander 6 yards to the one side, right? That's a pretty common experience when you play in goal, I think, as a non-goalie. It's I thought the goal was over there, man. I did not realize. That's my bad. I think you'd get a little bit more of that. Maybe I think that's how this would play out. I would be curious to see if this was a real thing, how teams would manage the goalkeeper. Because immediately the goalkeeper becomes even more important than it already is, which is a hugely impactful position to begin with. How do you manage where do you put your goalkeeper? Because they've just become your greatest attacking weapon. Presumably, they can just catch the ball in the opposition's box and chuck it in, right? I mean, I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that. So then they are now your most important attacker and your most important defender. But you can't be both of those things when you have to run 100 yards from one side of the field to the other. So when do you send your goalkeeper forward? And that's what makes me think you end up with set pieces, just to parse this out a little bit more. On a set piece, you then have time for your goalkeeper to go and trot up, and they don't have to sprint and be just utterly gassed. And after they made that play, the ball is probably either ending up out of bounds if it's a failed set piece, or it's ending up like 30 feet in the air, and the goalkeeper has time to start running back the other way to defend. So I suppose maybe one implication here is that the goalkeepers are going to start looking like Adama Traore because they're going to need to have some impressive fitness to survive in these kinds of games. But that's what makes me think it's going to get quite set-piecey, because I don't think you can actually manage your goalkeeper as your most important attacker and defender in regular open play moments, or at least not to the full extent that you could do it on set pieces. So I think you're going to see a choppier game. The physical profile of goalkeepers probably is going to change a little bit, and the taller you are, the more useful you're about to be. But I think the game itself would be worse off.
Joe, all right, like addendum. If you get a goal, like a direct goal or an assist from the goalkeeper, when the opposition kickoff, the goalkeeper has to start at midfield. So when kickoff is taken, the keeper just has to be on their horse to get back into the box to try to make a save. And now we're just going fully set piece back and forth. What goes wrong?
Second addendum, what if the goalkeeper could handle also in the center circle and they can like field goal block that kickoff with their hands?
I think we've solved it, guys. I think we've done it.
Ultra Ball. We're creating Ultra Ball. And
Let's just add a third goal. Why not? That exists already, right? Omega Ball, something like that. Let's do that.
God, we're full of amazing ideas today. Creative juices are flowing. So that bird
amazing
talk
is
at
a
the
word.
start.
Yeah, bird-brained is what I was thinking, but...
Very good. Trayman35, we hope that answered your question comprehensively. We believe it did. If you have a listener question, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/questions, or you can visit our Discord. There's a listener questions channel right in there. You can access it at patreon.com/totalsoccershow. All right. Thank you very much, Taylor Rockwell, for your contributions to this here listener questions episode, and for everything you've done this week and in all other previous weeks.
My pleasure, my birding friend.
Thank you very much to our favourite Phoenician Joe Larry as well.
Squaw!
Is that the noise a phoenix makes?
I don't know. Yeah, it is now, darn it.
You would be if you were on fire. You'd probably make a noise like that as well. To be
It would
fair.
be darn similar.
Yeah, very good. Joe Lowry, thank you very much indeed. And listener, thank you for joining us on the feed this week. We'll be back very shortly, but for now, bye.